Blameless Severed Extremities is the third full-length album from Lappeenranta, Finland-based death metal band Scythrow. Now, they didn't start out as a death metal band. In fact, I think it was kind of a pandemic-era spawned thing where they were playing a form of traditional heavy metal to start on their first record, kind of amateurish, like teenage metal stuff that they put out officially under this name. And by the second record, they turned into a more of a death metal style band, and they hadn't quite gotten there yet. On this third record, they seem to have maybe more of the general fundamentals of what a death metal record should look and sound like. They're definitely playing death metal songs, and they seem to fit into what Finland has going on for a kind of new old school death metal influenced sound. Now, that doesn't mean that this is trendy or hardcore-ish death metal, but more so the Autopsy and Mortician-esque sound that we're finding from a lot of the United States death metal underground, the actual underground, in the last 5 or so years, in terms of barbaric and brutal stuff that has a little bit more of a classic sound rather than things that are inspired by things like hip hop beats and hardcore style stuff. And so this is a pretty interesting walk up in terms of their story leading up to this record. It's kind of hard to go through their discography and take it seriously, but if you look to their previous EP and this record, you see they got a little bit more serious with thrash metal influenced death metal sounds. And well, I'll cut into more of what this record is and what I would compare it to in a second. For now, let's hit a song, and you'll get a sense for the quality and the general approach of the band right away. So there are some more moshable, simple-ass riffs on this record. I think I would compare the sound to something like Cryptic Hatred and Disguised Malignance, in the sense that Finnish death metal and the young folks who are putting it together now are less influenced by the really classic stuff, and they're less influenced by the late 2000s and early 2010s resurgence of traditional death metal and the United States death metal sounds. And in this case, they're more interested in the brutality of things while also keeping the riffs fairly simple. Now, this is an approximation of classic death metal. I wouldn't say that it is a pure study. I wouldn't say they put a ton of thought into it in terms of how it all comes together. And in that sense, it does remind me of some of the less intense side of Midwest death metal of a certain era, prior to maybe 1995, in that it's simpler. It's not perfect in any sense, but if you like the first Bioaggression record, there is that level of brokenness to it that is still appealing if you're a fan of like Autopsy and looking for something else. And so there is something to this record, and there's obviously they are obviously fans of death metal, but they're still kind of just playing with it and having a good time in the same way that maybe early Morbific was and is, just putting together something that is fun to them still. And it doesn't fully appeal to me in terms of the actual execution and the actual riffs in every sense, but I do think that this is a good album and a good introduction to this band. I wouldn't recommend going back in time further than the tape that came out prior to this. I don't think any of that is particularly good, but this is a generally above average release with some issues to it. So for me, it's worth recommending to people who if you just want death metal, this is a death metal album that is a little bit better than a lot of the sort of basement level garbage that's out there. And so it's a band that has a lot of promise in what they're doing, and I really like the choice of the album art and the way they presented themselves. And I think in the right hands, this will be a pretty interesting band beyond this point, if they stick with it and whatnot. So worth checking out. That's a moderately high recommendation for me. And go ahead and read my review to just get more of my thoughts in depth as to why I gave it this score.